to endorse you in the belief that your opponent is actually a Republican. So that's unusual, and I'm glad for that support.
Right.
And uh, take it away.
Yeah, it is kind of unusual. Hey, real quick, like before I get started, I just want you guys to know we have a dynamite group of elected officials. I've been doing this 35 years, sheriff for almost 20. And just collectively, the group of elected officials is just a dynamite group. And so I think you guys need to know that as supporters of the Democrats that we have in office. So I just wanted to share that with you. Um, so I'm going to try to go in chronological order. We've done a lot of stuff over the last 20 years. We've got some big stuff going on right now that I'll talk about. But just to give you a little bit of personal history for me, I lived in Boone County all my life. I went to Parkgate Elementary School, Jeff Junior High School, and then Hickman. Met my lovely wife 31 years ago, and we have three great kids: Tanner, Tyler, and Katie, that have all grown up on us way too fast. So my mom, I always say this, and I started this back in '04 when I was running. My mom was from Ashland, and my dad was from Harrisburg, and they kind of met in the middle, and that's where they had their family grow up, and then we ended up going up to the Hallsville area, the Columbia Sportsman's Club. So lived here all my life. I'm so bought into Boone County. I think any elected official or anyone that knows me will tell you that. So that's kind of my personal side. The work history. I went to Columbia College, so I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree that I obtained from Columbia College. But in my senior year, back in 1989, I did an internship with the Boone County Sheriff's Office. Ted Bain, which many of you guys probably remember, was the sheriff at the time. He hired me after that internship. I started in the jail and got some jail experience, transferred to the road, ended up getting promoted from deputy to corporal to then sergeant, lieutenant, captain. I was the enforcement commander for a lot of years. And then when Ted decided that he was going to retire, I actually had never thought about running for sheriff. I really liked what I did, but I was approached by a group of Democrats that asked me if I would be willing to run, and I did. Lucky for us, it all turned out well, and won that election, and then took office in January of '05. And so, man, since '05, we have done a lot of good stuff. And I credit Ted, and I'd be remiss if I didn't, but Ted did such a good job of taking us out of the good old boy redneck days. That was a stereotypical, probably analysis of sheriff's offices, and we started becoming professional. I think our group here over the last 20 years has really taken that to a different level. So in '05, one of the first things that was a talking point in my campaign is I wanted to create a traffic unit for traffic safety. We did that. We now have, gosh, I think 4 grant-funded positions through the Division of Highway Safety. We're big players in that. We have a great reputation for the work that we do for traffic safety. And so that was one of our early accomplishments back in '05 and '06. The second thing was Internet Crimes Unit. I don't know if any of you remember Andy Anderson. He was a longtime detective for us. We started the Internet Crimes Unit, I believe, in '06 or '07. And one of the purposes of the Internet Crimes initially is to protect our children from sexual predators. And so we worked a lot of enticement cases, child porn cases, that type of thing. That unit, so it's been around, 17, 18 years. We've expanded into a lot of forensic work. A lot of our law enforcement partners rely on us for forensics. And as a whole, law enforcement is behind in this technology thing, but our agency is well far beyond what most agencies are. And so a lot of our partners rely on us. I've got a dynamite unit. And then we have partnerships with the federal government and also the university police department. So that's been a great relationship. Another thing that was really important for me was crisis intervention for our mental health consumers. We started a CIT unit in 2007 with our partners, and that has really expanded as well. And obviously, as a sheriff's office, we deal with it not only on the enforcement side, but we're also dealing with it on the jail side. Probably 20 to 25% of our population is going through some type of mental health crisis or illness. And so we've really expanded that again over the years. I think we started that in '07. I work very closely with Janet Thompson. She's very passionate about the topic. She does some really great work. Actually, and I don't know if Stephanie Morell, Judge Morell's on today, but Stephanie, another great candidate that we all need to be behind, just does some fabulous work with the mental health individuals that we have in custody and the work that we're doing with DMH. So that whole crisis intervention focus on mental health component has been absolutely great for us over the years, and we continue to expound on that program. And then one of the things, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later with our current stuff, but about a decade ago, we started a regional canine training program. And what that means is when I was an enforcement commander, we would send our canine handlers. It was like up around Lincoln or Omaha, Nebraska, and then it went to Southeast Missouri, and then we were sending them to Pennsylvania. And so what happens when your handlers are away for either the initial training or the maintenance training, you don't have the dog, you're paying per diem, hotel, food, all of that. So the thought process was, I have a really good guy here in Chris Smith. He's currently my canine director. Why not send Chris to all the state and national certification training, and then we'll train our dogs and our partners' dogs around Central Missouri, which will help not only us, but will help all of our partners, right? And so we started that program, and I'm really proud to say that we're training over 40 agencies in the state of Missouri now. That regional training concept, because it's like Field of Dreams, right? If you put on quality training, people are going to come to get that quality training. And so we branch all the way out to Buchanan County, which is on the Kansas line, all the way to the Iowa line, down to West Plains. We're into the St. Charles area. And so, again, we have about 40 different agencies that are using that regional training approach for getting their dogs not only trained initially, but that maintenance training as well. And again, benefits us and benefits our partners, that very cost-effective training for them, and they're not having to pay, again, hotel and per diem and then have the dogs gone for 2 weeks. So that's been a dynamite program for us. Then a couple other things that we've done, and it's just we've done a lot of stuff. So I'm trying to remember in chronological order. So when Ferguson happened, which we all remember back in 2014, it was apparent to me, and we were really good as an agency at that point. We had good policies and procedures, but it was apparent to me at that time that there was going to be a trend that you needed national accreditation based on best practices, case law, transparency, all of those things. So we ventured into an accreditation, a national accreditation called CALIA, which is the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. We started that accreditation, and within a year or so, I learned of a second accreditation on the jail side, again, right? Because the sheriff's office is unique from a municipal agency because we have not only the enforcement component, but we also have the jail component. So we then researched the National Institute of Jail Operations and that national accreditation. No one in the state of Missouri had that accreditation. So we started venturing down that road. So to kind of let you know what this looks like, everything is based on again, case law, best practices, national standards. We met for about 3.5 years, every Tuesday and Wednesday, went over policy that was drafted by our policy writers, and ended up coming up with the policies that we then present to these national accreditations. And so in 2019, we became the first jail in the state of Missouri and the first jail in the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals to receive this national accreditation. And then in 2020, we became the second sheriff's office to achieve the CALIA accreditation, which ultimately makes us the only sheriff's office in the state of Missouri that has 2 national accreditations. So we're really proud of that as well. And then some other things that we did, we started a professional development unit. as we were growing and as everybody was having a problem with hiring and retention, we ended up starting this professional development unit to where we could focus more on the retention that we had here and then going out and finding the best qualified applicants. That has worked really well for us. While other agencies are still struggling to find qualified folks, we're doing really well in that aspect. Morale is at an all-time high here. I'll talk about that a little bit thanks to our 3 commissioners. But we're just in a really good place right now. And a lot of that is that implementation of the professional development unit. And then one of the more recent things that we've done is what we call a directed patrol unit. And it's very similar, if you've ever heard me talk about the Columbia Police Department street crimes unit, where these units are focused on this violent crime that we all hear about. And like right now, one of our biggest problems in this community is we've got a lot of juvenile shooters. And so we started a directed patrol unit, which is basically like a street crimes unit, but I wanted it to be directed at those involved in criminal activity. And so we're working really well with the Columbia Police Department right now. We've done a couple of operations here recently together. Our folks will ride together, sharing information. And so that's been a big plus as well. So that's kind of like the operational stuff that we've been doing. And again, excited about all of that. And I'm really proud of the work that our group has done. I've got a dynamite group of people here, and they make it all work. In fact, I joke with the command staff that I come up with all these like visionary ideas, but they're the ones that have to implement and execute a lot of them. And so it's just, again, a good group that they're always about doing what's best. We're always striving to be better tomorrow than we were today. And so that's working out really well. So we've got 3 big things we're working on right now. And, you know, as I like lay in bed at night thinking about, you know, I've got my mouth full chewing, and then it seems like we're taking another bite out of something else that is big. So you guys are probably all aware of the training center, and I want to give you a little history on that, the training center and the firearms range. So back when I was first elected, I did a handshake deal with Billy Sapp, Alan Barnes, and Larry Moore, who owned the land across from the Riggs Quarry. And we made a firing range on that quarry so we could do all of our training and qualifications. And that handshake deal has worked for us for all these years. The Boone County Fairgrounds, we had made into our makeshift training facility, and we had used that for decades and decades. We do a variety of scenario-based training, and it can be traffic stops, building search, mental health de-escalation, domestic violence scenarios, really the gamut. You can do whatever scenario you want to do. And I'm a big proponent of you have to have hands-on practice and preparation to be good at what you do. And the example that I always give is you take Eli Drinkwitz, the head coach of the University of Missouri football team. When they have an opponent coming to town on a Saturday, they're preparing all week for that opponent. They're going to watch film. They're going to put in scheme. They're going to have practice. They're going to run plays. They're going to do everything they need to do hands-on to prepare for that opponent on Saturday night. It's the exact same thing for law enforcement. We have to do scenario-based training to where our deputies and our law enforcement partners can experience what they might see on the road. Now, it might not be the exact same thing, but they're going to be able to draw from the back of their mind on, hey, I saw, I went through this and it was a similar deal, and that's going to help them get through that particular incident that they're dealing with in the field. The big thing for us is we never know when our game is. It could be this afternoon, it could be tonight, it could be Sunday morning. You just never know. So you have to be prepared. So because of the deal that was made in 2021, when the county commission transferred the Boone County Fairgrounds property to the city of Columbia, what happened was we ultimately lost our makeshift training facility. And so as a first-class county, and with that mindset that I just gave you, we had to come up with something to make sure that our deputies were trained to my expectations. And so I started working with an architect a couple of years ago, Eric Miller. He's a local architect with PW Architects, and we started kind of designing this training center that was going to have a indoor firing range with it. And during that process, the commission was supportive. Along came a guy named Kip Kendrick. And Kip Kendrick talked about public safety. And when he came into office, he acted on that. And that was Kip was a big reason why this agency is where it is today. Janet and Justin, obviously, very supportive as well. All three of them on what they're doing for. It's the best threesome that I've seen in my career. But when Kip came in, he said, hey, there's some money down at Jeff City. Let's go down and see if we can't get some money to help fund this training center. And it's basically a regional concept, just like our canine program that I talked about earlier. It's the same concept that we're going to do for this training, to where we'll provide very cost-effective training to all of our partners. Obviously, we're going to focus on our agency, but we're going to be able to give Callaway County or Randolph County the ability to get high-quality training at a low cost. So we went to Jeff City. We spent a lot of time in Jeff City, and we were able to get $4 million appropriated last session for the training center. The county also had some general revenue money that they set aside. We ended up going out to bid. Reinhardt Construction got the bid. And in fact, I'm very excited, but right behind me, they're moving dirt today. So the training center is off and going. Again, the regional concept is going to be very beneficial to, again, not only us, but to all of our partners. And then with that, the indoor firing range and live shoot house gives us the opportunity to not only do simulation training, which is basically like a big video game, but you go from simulation training to simulation training, which is a lot like paint gun, just to help you kind of understand what we do. So video game to paint gun to then live tactical training in the shoot house. So we'll have all of that on our campus here, which will be extremely beneficial. And so we're super excited about the training center. So one of the other things that we're working on currently is a child care center. And so you would think a law enforcement agency is, not really, that's not our bailiwick, right? And so I'll give Janet Thompson again the credit. She mentioned this a few years ago to me and thought it would be a great idea. If you just think about childcare, right? One, very expensive. Two, hard to find. Just 8 to 5, but think about a 24/7 operation like the sheriff's office or 911. So we also explored, hey, could we find some funding to make this childcare idea come to life? And we would put it right here on our campus with the training center and the firing range. So again, back to Jeff City, right? We also had a grant opportunity. And so I can tell you right now in House Bill 20, there is $2.5 million appropriated for the child care center. We also have a grant application in with the Department of Public Safety that we're hopeful that we're going to be awarded as well. And then the child care center, which will be a 24/7 operation at some point, would then be built again right here behind me on our campus. And just think about the benefit of that. There's only one other law enforcement agency in the country that has dove into this, and it's San Diego Police Department. So we've obviously been in contact with San Diego. And so we're learning the do's and the don'ts. And again, this is new to us, right? But imagine the benefit when you talk about hiring and retention that this child care center will be when we get it up and going to 24/7, to where someone that works in the jail that works 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. is going to have a place to take their child at a reduced cost, guaranteed child care right on campus. You couldn't find a safer place, right, than on the sheriff's office campus. And then think about 911. And Kip uses this number quite a bit, but roughly about 70% of 911 call takers and dispatchers are female. And so whether it's right or wrong, and Kip always says this, oftentimes that child responsibility is on the mother. And I'm going to wish everybody a happy Mother's Day at the end of this, but it falls on the mother, right? And so wouldn't it be nice if there's a 911 dispatcher that could drop their child off at the child care center, go to work, maybe if time allows on lunch, come down and have a picnic lunch with their child and then go back to work. And at the end of that shift, they're picking their child up and going home. We think that it's going to be a huge, again, not only hiring retention tool, but just morale overall. And so we're excited about that. And I do think that will come to fruition. Because again, we know that we've got money in House Bill 20 right now, and we think that we're going to receive some additional funding through that DPS grant. Excuse me. And then the last thing that I'm going to mention today, I really can't talk about. But I want you guys to remember there's going to be two things that I'm going to talk about today that I want you guys to invite me back for, okay? So one of the things that we're working on is a partnership with the University of Missouri Extension. It's going to be a really good thing for, again, not only the Boone County Sheriff's Office, but for all of our regional law enforcement partners. And so we actually had a big meeting yesterday afternoon. There's some messaging that's having to be done in the background, but that's going to be a big thing that I would love to talk to you about more. And that's one of that big bite after everything that I told you that we've got going on. We're going to take on another big project because, again, we think it's the right thing to do, not only, again, for our office, but the community at large. So that's something that we're working on. Another thing that I'll just mention to you right now is the sheriff's retirement and the prosecutor's retirement are both in a lot of trouble. And it's basically based off of, in 1983, the state legislature passed a law that separated the sheriffs from the other county elected officials. And then the prosecutors did the same thing. And then over the years, after almost 40 years, the Missouri Supreme Court deemed both, well, actually the sheriffs unconstitutional, and the prosecutors are getting ready to meet the same fate. And so one of the things we've been working on the last several years down at the legislature is trying to get those pension plans back by making both offices administrators of justice in the Missouri Constitution. And so we think that we're going to hit the floor in the next week, and we're being told that it's going to pass, and then it would go to the voters in the primary election. And so Roger, our prosecutor, Roger Johnson, and I are wanting to make the rounds similar to what, and some of you guys might remember this, but when we did the 911 tax, I came to Muleskinners and went to all the Rotaries and Optimist groups because education in that is a big piece, right? We all want to know what we're voting for. And so we want to educate everybody on what this is and the benefit of this resolution if it does indeed get to the voters. So we'll want to come back, Roger and I, to visit with you guys about that. But other than that, just a ton of really good stuff going on. We're super busy. That's the way we like it. And I'll take any questions that anybody has.
Any questions? Sue and Herb.
There's one in the chat as well.
Sue, you're muted.
I'm just going to make a statement about Ted Boehm and his family. I was fortunate, and I agree with you, he was very ethical. I didn't know his work nearly as closely as you did, but I worked in the office administration indirectly, but had a lot of dealings with his brother, John, and again, a very similar person. And I had the opportunity at a personnel regional conference to meet his sister, who was head of personnel for the city of St. Peters in the St. Louis area.
Oh, wow.
So I'm not sure many had that kind of opportunity. But what I was going to ask on this child care center, will that be open to other than county employees? Because the reason I'm asking, I'm familiar with what happens when you've got in the particular family related our relatives. She's a nurse with the odd hours, not the 5-day week, the extended hours. And he's a fireman and the child care issue, you almost have to have family in the area.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be open to people like that? And I really like the idea that you're trying to incorporate this.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and the answer is yes. So what we're going to do is, again, we've got to get our footing underneath us. It's not something that we've been in that business. So ultimately, the commission will go out and they'll hire a director that has a lot of experience in this area. And then we'll open it up just for our public safety campus here. But we know that we're not going to be able to fill it. And so basically, our design is we're going to finish the main level. The lower level will be unfinished. And then when we get our footing after a year or two, we're then going to open that up to all of our other first responder partners. So that would be open to fire, to your point, EMS, obviously other law enforcement. And so we want to, and the way we campaign for this at the Capitol is this is for the first responders, the ones that are having problems because they work odd hours. There's just no childcare for it. So yes, we will make this available to all of our first responders in the Boone County area. Great question.
David?
Yes, Sheriff Carey, do you currently have or have you considered doing public tours of your campus? I would love to see the facilities, the jail, the canine training area, the new training center once it's completed, things like that. Maybe a once a year open house or something like that.
Yeah, so by all means, I mean, we're going to be, and we're proud of what we have now, but we're going to be really proud of this training center and range. So definitely when it gets up and going, our canine training is actually down at an old Reality House building right now, and it's working really well down there. So yeah, that's a great idea and something that we have thought about. So pay attention to that here in about 14 to 16 months. Thank you.
Mary Jo.
Yeah, Dwayne, I hope you're consulting with Wesley on the child care center. And
I am. You know,
good. She knows what she's doing.
Yeah, she's a parent educator, and so she has some experience in this area. And then obviously just being a great mother to 3 kids. But yeah, interestingly enough, and I'll just share this with you, both of our boys, their wives are expecting, and they were having a hard time finding childcare. And Tyler's on this call right now, but Leslie, through a contact with parents as teachers, was able to help Tyler and his wife Melanie out to find childcare. And I think Tanner and Maddie are still looking. So it's difficult for everyone. And then when you look at the cost of not only just life is expensive, but that childcare is expensive. So yeah, I rely heavily on Leslie for a lot of things.
My second part of my question is, on your deputy staff, what's the breakdown by race and by gender?
Boy, I wouldn't have an exact number for you. So historically, sheriff's offices have not had a lot of women. And a lot of that is the area that we're covering, backups a long ways away. Women just sometimes don't like that. I will tell you, and I've got the sheet right here in front of me, we're getting ready to hire 2 women. We have 1 in the academy currently, and we're sending 3 more. So it's like in 35 years that I've been here, I've never seen the influx in the number of female applicants. And I think that says a lot about the agency and what we're doing. And again, diversity wise, as far as African Americans, we've really picked up on that. My administrative deputy, she's been with me for over 30 years, but we actually have a lot of our deputies now are African American. So and again, I credit that back, from Ted taking us out of that good old boy, I hate to use the word redneck, but the good old boy redneck stereotype. And we've just done nothing but increase that professionalism, which then has drawn that diversity to us, if that makes sense.
Good. It does. And thanks, Dwayne, for the job you're doing.
Thank you.
Dave Luthold.
My question is about mental health and the mental health people that you have in the jail. Do we have people with mental health problems who are sending out to other jails or other prisons elsewhere? And what are you able to do so far to help to do with those people who have mental health problems and are in the county jail?
Yeah, it's a tough problem, to be honest with you. So let me take you back to, because this is something that Janet and I talk about quite a bit. So we all remember deinstitutionalization back in the 60s and 70s, where the federal and state government wanted to close down a lot of these mental health facilities, and they were going to provide all kinds of funding for treatment and services outside, correct? So the problem is that that mega funding never did come. And then what happened was jails and prisons became the new mental health facilities. And so we have 24-hour coverage. We actually just left a mental health provider, and we're now with a company called Turnkey, and that actually just went through commission last week. So Janet Thompson is very passionate about this topic. She does a program, MAC policing, through the Missouri Association of Counties. Stephanie Morell, who I mentioned earlier, works with us very closely. But the big issue is this: there's not enough bed space in the Department of Mental Health for all the individuals that are suffering from mental health illness or crisis. So ultimately, our jail population probably has about anywhere between 20 and 30% of those individuals. And so what happens is they have to stay in jail because there's no place for them to go. There's no beds for the Department of Mental Health. So Roger Johnson, our prosecutor, very involved in this. Again, Stephanie, Janet, obviously our office, but we're trying to put pressure on Department of Mental Health to free up beds and to get beds. Because guess what? I don't have any beds either. I'm housing like 50 out of county right now. So their excuse of we don't have any beds is the same excuse that I have, but the jail is the fallback for everything. And so it's tough. I mean, and it's going to be a challenge from this day forward. But collectively here in Boone County, we have a lot of people committed to it and working on it. And so more and more pressure needs to be applied to the Department of Mental Health. And at some point, our state and federal government's got to start funding some services and programs to relieve what we're experiencing at the county level.
Well, let me read a question on the chat from Kathy. I think she's got microphone issues.
Okay.
She says, I would like to see law enforcement adopt a guardian as opposed to a warrior philosophy. What is your thinking about that? And second question, a recent local news story mentioned that there was not a domestic violence focused Boone County deputy at this time. Can you address that?
Okay, so can you read the first one again and then I'll address both?
Yeah. She would like to see law enforcement adopt a guardian as opposed to a warrior philosophy.
Lawyer?
Or warrior.
Oh, warrior.
Warrior.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, the problem is we use a little bit of both, right? But the amount of violent crime that we're experiencing in this community, you've got to have a warrior mindset when you're a road deputy. It's changed so much. And again, please don't think that that is our mindset as an agency, because it's not. So I'm going to share, before I go to the domestic violence, I'm going to share what our motto is at the Boone County Sheriff's Office. You can ask anybody that works for me and they would be able to recite this to you because I remind them of it all the time. We treat everyone like we would like our mother to be treated in any given situation. It's fail proof. And if you don't do that, you don't work for me very long. I introduced that in 2005. And so we are not just out trying to arrest everyone and having that warrior mindset. Let me give you an example. I'm going to pull this out real quick. So in 2023, we made 10,493 car stops. Okay. In a warrior mindset, we're writing a lot of tickets, right? But in a community-minded traffic safety, we want you to change your behavior mindset. We issued 8,526 warnings where we're telling people, hey, we understand that life is hard and that it's expensive, and you might not have the money to fix that headlight or get your vehicle license. But the problem is at some point you got to do those things, right? We all have to license our vehicle. So we might give 2 or 3 warnings and give them time to save the money up, because we know that, hey, they might be trying to feed their kids at home and they don't have the extra money to fix the car, to get it licensed, to do whatever. But at the end of the day, we're enforcers of the law, and we've got to enforce the law. But if we had just simply, Kathy, if we just simply had a warrior mindset, we'd be going out trying to arrest everybody, write as many tickets as we can. But that's not what the Boone County Sheriff's Office is about. And so on the domestic violence piece, and it's amazing to me, our media and how they try to spin different things. What we do at our office is we have a large detective unit, right? We are not pigeonholing one detective to only work on domestic violence cases. And then they acted like we didn't call them back. They did not call our PIO, Brian Lear, or he would have called them right back. So we no longer apply for the grant because we decided that we wanted all of our detectives to be focused on domestic violence and any other crimes against persons or property. So it's basically we share the wealth with all of our detectives on those types of cases.
I think Herb has a question.
You.
Thank you. We appreciate what you're doing, Dwayne.
Oh, thank you.
A quick compliment.
Thank you.
I appreciate greatly what you have been concentrating on and reporting here: recruitment, retention, training. Ted Bain would be proud of you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
He was, as I was original member of the Peace Officer Standard and Training Commission from Missouri, as I recall, the first chair.
Yeah.
And second question, building a little bit on the last question. I believe we both said to each other that we knew rather well Clarence Harmon, who was police chief of St. Louis when Ted Bain was here, and later mayor, and his key guru nationally, or was, of the community policing concept. I believe we both were approving. Can you identify some of the other good things that you think have improved with the Sheriff's Department that are consistent with what you can take from that concept to apply to a county-wide operation, not just a city?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, we think we've done a lot of great stuff. I'd say that school resource officers, which is something that I didn't mention in my opening, we have full-time SROs in Harrisburg and Sturgeon. Our small municipal partners, Centralia, Hallsville, and Ashland, take care of those schools. But I think the SRO program and what we've done with that, as far as we've expanded past DARE, and we're doing a lot of active shooter training. We're well known across the state for that. Now, you might not think that that's a COP type thing, but that's very important for kids and faculty to be very comfortable and trained in that area. So we've done a lot of active shooter stuff. And then with that program, we've done Boone Hospital, we do the government center. Basically, if we're approached, we recently had, let me think of the business. We've done some churches and stuff like that. So we basically expanded this active shooter training into the community, county and city both. Because Boone Hospital, think about an emergency room and what they're dealing with on a daily basis, the OR, that type of thing. So they have to be familiar with the response. And so we were doing that way before, Uvalde and all of that. We've been doing it for a long time. So I think the school resource officers, we still do a lot of stuff with the different communities. Because, one of the things, and I kind of view myself as kind of a pragmatic Democrat, I think I make very sensible and fiscally responsible decisions. I'm very fact-driven and solution-based, and I'm willing to help anybody if I believe in the person, the cause, or the reason. So, like when Centralia, they needed coverage because they didn't have a police chief, they called the Boone County Sheriff, and the Boone County Sheriff covers Centralia, for 4 months. And we do community-oriented policing in Centralia with our presence. Same thing in Ashland, right? We do that. If people know that if they call me and I can help them, I want to help them. And that's throughout this whole community. So a lot of that is not tangible, maybe, but it's important. And I built those relationships. So an example, and again, I can't get into it too much, but this new partnership that we're wanting to do with the University of Missouri Extension, on Friday, I made a call to about 15 or 20 people that are partners in a variety of things that I do. And because of the reputation that we have built at this agency, I make the phone call, this is what I asked for, and they say we're on board. So we have got a lot of branches coming off of our trunk that we have built over the last 20 years to develop the reputation that we have. And I hope that answers your question. I probably went a little too in depth on that, but
not at all. That's what I wanted to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Pam, you had a question?
Yes, I do. I have two questions, and they're both short. How many openings do you have? And you want me to go ahead? You want to answer that first? No,
go ahead. I think I can remember if they're short.
Okay. The other one is about traffic safety. Yesterday, I was driving behind an SUV. It was not a truck. It did not have a rear Missouri license plate. In the place of a license plate was something that was bought that had the letters for Mizzou on it, but it was not a Mizzou license plate. Is that not against the law?
I'd have to see it, but yeah, it has to be registered through the Department of Revenue. So if it was kind of a fake plate, then yeah, that would be a violation of the law because they probably have not registered that vehicle. And if all of you guys are driving around, especially the city of Columbia, there are all kinds of expired license plates, temp tags, and that type of thing. So if it was kind of a fake plate that they're trying to display, that would obviously be a violation of the law because they're not registering their vehicle with DOR. And so as far as I think the road, we currently have about 5 or 6 openings. So we're doing really well there. And then in the jail, we have roughly about 9 or 10 currently. And so during COVID and shortly after, we were as many as 23 down in the jail. In fact, we rallied and had our road deputies that had experience in the jail. They were doing shifts in the jail to help us get through that rough time. But we're doing extremely well right now. I mean, I've been here for 35 years and, we might be filled up for a day or two, but you're always going to have openings and we know that. And then one of the things that we do as an agency, and I always ask the troops, when I meet with them for squad meetings and such is, would you rather work shorthanded and search for really qualified people, or would you want us to lower our standards? And of course, I'm not going to lower the standards, but I want them to say, we'd rather work shorthanded and get the best of the best. And so that's what we do. Right now in the law enforcement industry, everybody's stealing from everybody else. If we raise our pay, the city's then going to raise theirs. Then the university's going to raise theirs. The highway patrol, thanks to the governor, they really ballooned up last year after session. So, but what I'm a believer in is money is a factor, but it's also the work environment, the culture that you establish, and making the environment and the work environment where you want to come to work. And I think for a lot of people, if the money's close, but they know the culture is really good, then they're going to still come here. And we're getting a bunch of applicants. And I'll just be honest with you, there's a lot of folks that we turn down because we don't think that they fit what we're looking for in the professionalism realm. They treat everyone like you would like your mother to be treated. If they're from another agency and we know through our background that they don't treat people well, they're not going to fit in our culture. So we are very slow and deliberate trying to get the best of the best here, but we're really happy where we are right now with the number of openings that we have.
That caused me to think of another question. What are the educational requirements to work?
So it used to be all law enforcement, and this is probably maybe 10 or 15 years ago, everybody started introducing like 60 hours of college credit. There weren't too many people, maybe the feds, but there weren't too many local agencies that went over the associate degree mark. But what we have found through student loan crisis and everything else, a lot of people that are wanting in our industry have never been to college. And so what we all did is we backed off of that that college education. And again, I've got an undergrad and a grad. I teach for Columbia College online as an adjunct. I value education, but again, if you're trying to get that really good individual that came from the military but went into the military at 18 and they're coming out in their early 20s but they've never been to college, they have a skill set and a mentality that we might like, and so we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves to where we can't hire them because they don't have college. So everybody has kind of backed off the college, and we're just taking the best qualified applicants that we can find.
Thank you.
Dave Taylor.
Sheriff, I live in a very rural area in southern Boone County, and on a farm and no site access to any roads. And across the creek, I'd say between 800 and 900 yards away, we have another farm, which isn't occupied, but is owned by people who like to come down and shoot off guns a lot. And they shoot off pretty high-powered, high-caliber weapons with semi-automatic, and sometimes it sounds like even faster than that, 20-round clips and more, bang, 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 over and over. Sometimes on a weekend, it will go on for hours. I know it's not illegal to shoot guns on your own property, but is there ever any time when you would want to hear about what's going on?
Oh, certainly. I mean, we would definitely go down and check it out, make sure there's no illegal automatic weapons. I mean, oftentimes when people are shooting a semi-auto, it can sound auto, but yeah, I mean, if you're having that issue and you want to give us a call, the deputies would be more than happy to come down and check it out. But to your point, it's not illegal as long as you're doing it in a safe direction with a berm behind it. Obviously, we can shut stuff down if it's not a safe shooting area. But yeah, it's unfortunately not against the law to do that, and that's something that happens, in the county, and we get other calls on it. So yeah, if you're ever concerned about that and you just want what's going on there checked out, just call the non-emergency number. The deputies be more than happy to go down and check it out.
Yeah, I'd have to call pretty often every time I was concerned, but when it really bothers me is after dark. Is it still legal to shoot semi-automatic weapons after dark?
No, we could then do, if it's after what we would consider a reasonable time, there's a peace disturbance statute. I don't remember what the statute number is, but it's basically if you're disturbing the peace of another. So if they're shooting guns off at 1 o'clock in the morning, that's obviously disturbing your peace. And then we would have a little bit of bite to go with our bark, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Have a question from Ken Schneeberger. Do you support using ticket collections to go towards pensions of sheriffs? And if so, why?
No, and so that's the way that the current retirement system is built on from 1983. So when he says, am I in support of that? The answer would be, I am in support of it because that's what we're trying to accomplish. The thought is that it's going to generate more and more tickets because we're wanting to generate more and more revenue for the sheriff's and the prosecutor's retirement. But that's actually not the case. I gave you those numbers earlier, right? I mean, out of almost 11,000 car stops, we almost have 9,000 warnings. So that's not really the issue. There are some groups that are making that an issue, but it's been around since 1983. So for almost 40 years before it became unconstitutional, it has worked well. And really, we're all susceptible to that. If I'm running down Highway 63 to go home for lunch today and I'm running too fast and I get stopped by a trooper, it has happened, and I get a ticket, then I've got to pay that fee, right? And so to answer the question, the way the current law is written, I do support that because it's been in place since 1983.
Alice, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a member of Moms and have been trying to get educated on these issues. There are just too many guns around. Children can carry guns. Would you support if you got support from other organizations, having a gun buyback in Columbia.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, certainly. I mean, the problem is, and I always say that the genie's out of the bottle, right? There's so many guns out there, we're not going to be able to just go out and get them all back. And I'm a big Second Amendment person, so I just want everybody to know
sure.
that. But if you can take steps, it's just like anything else, right? With mental health, with domestic violence, if you can take steps and get individuals to agree to bring those guns back in. I mean, the program has worked in bigger areas. The problem is a lot of what we're seeing, those guns are stolen. So
right.
a lot of these juveniles that we're dealing with right now, and 14 to 16-year-olds that are shooting at each other instead of fist fighting, you're not going to get those individuals, to bring those guns back in. And so, the big thing is, and I know that the Columbia Police Department talks about this a lot, is not leaving handguns in your vehicle, locking your vehicle, doing some of that. And of course, I'm a big proponent of parents parenting, to be quite honest with you. Like my wife, Leslie, and I would have known where our 14-year-old was at 2:00 in the morning. They would have been at our house in our bed. And so there's just so many areas that collectively as a society we need to work on. But yeah, to answer your question, I would be supportive of that. We could do that at a location and see what kind of response we get. But I would be definitely willing to partner with anybody that wanted to try that.
I could be mistaken, but I think Jeff City had one sometime in the past. Not that.
Yeah, I mean, I know the one that's in my mind is Kansas City. I know they've done that. And I could check with Chief Wilde to see if they did that and if they had success with that. But that would be easy for me to partner with, Chief Schluty and Chief Weimer. We come up with a location, we assign some people to it, and then we just see what kind of response that we get.
Yeah, I don't know where you'd raise the funds to, if it's a buyback. I don't know where you do that. I've not researched it, but thank you for your answer and thanks for being open to it.
Oh, you're welcome.
You mentioned an increase in violence, and I'm wondering, is that just a finite number of, I don't call them gangs, but groups that have personal or economic hostilities, or is it more generalized?
No, so I mean, it's a really good question, and I talk about this on radio all the time, is that we're really talking about, and you can say groups or gangs. We use the word gangs just because we have intel, obviously, that you guys don't have. But it's a group of about 40 to 50 individuals. When we had the ATF task force that was housed in our building, and we had a collective group between the Columbia Police Department, University, Sheriff's Office, and the ATF, we were making a lot of really good gun cases. And we were sending some people that needed to go to prison because they were really violent individuals. And then when the Second Amendment Preservation Act passed, it basically limited us in what we could do with our federal partners on gun control. And so ultimately, it's a small group that creates a lot of these issues. And what will happen is you'll have one shooting incident, and then there's going to be 4, 5, 6 retaliation. We just had one the other night in Green Hills where they then retaliate. And again, I talked about this a bunch over my career, but in my day, you just went to the parking lot, you fist fought, and it was over. But they just don't fist fight anymore, and everybody's wanting to shoot at each other. And so it's basically really confined to the North Side Gang and the East Side Gang, and there's different names for those, and it's different groups those two different groups in different areas. And the thing that really is startling to me, and I think to law enforcement, is just the age of the shooters that has gone down. When you're talking about 14 and 15, 16-year-old kids pulling the trigger, it's scary. So we're again doing a lot of work right now with the Columbia Police Department, and we're really trying to focus on those groups that are involved with those shootings. I think you're on mute.
Sue or Herb, did you have another question?
Yes, I have a couple of things. First, let me ask, on these gangs, are there any young girls on it, or is it pretty much 95 or 100% male?
Yeah, mostly male, and then you'll have female associates through relationships, girlfriends, sisters, that kind of thing. But yeah, these are all young males that we're dealing with.
Because they're not, and the females aren't the ones doing the shooting.
No, no.
Okay. The two other things. One is that you inspired me on. One time I had the opportunity to get a ride home from when I worked in Jeff City. I was in a carpool, but once in a while somebody went home, the driver needed to go home early, so you had to scrounge around and get a ride. And I got a ride with somebody that worked at the courthouse there. And she had previously been with a county, she'd been a county deputy sheriff somewhere, not in Boone County, but else in a smaller county. And she made an interesting comment to me that I've thought, and this was probably, I heard this probably 30 years ago. She said, I only got knocked out once. She said, as a female, even when a guy's drunk and is upset at a police officer or, a deputy sheriff, somehow that thing kicks in that they're not supposed to do something to a female. And I thought, that's a real asset to have in your jobs, to have some of those people that can automatically have a little bit of a safety valve that others, just because of who they are, don't get. So I just giving that. Anyway, then another thing, and Herb, who likes to talk, likes to shut me up.
Talk away.
Okay. And then this thing that struck me about these different things where you're trying to do some training, which I think is apt in different areas, I think is fabulous. I also would gather it helps your budget, because then you are raising some funds to help support your trainers, right?
Right.
And that keeps it so that not only do you save money on your training, but you probably can then support more staff.
You are a very smart lady. Yeah, that's exactly true, right? But we're not charging an exorbitant amount of money, right? Sure. Because we want to make it to where they're getting really quality training at a lesser price. But you cannot find another law enforcement agency that has 2 and soon to be 3 revenue sources like we have that comes in to the county to help support what we're doing. So I'm really proud of that. Thank you. And again, it takes a great group that we have to make that work.
We are so lucky to have such a wonderful set of people in our county and our city.
Thank you, Sheriff Carey. We really appreciated this. And I hope you can read the comments, because there were several complimentary comments made, and we didn't have time to read them all. But thank you for being here today and for the job that you're doing.
Well, really appreciate it. And like I said, Roger and I might hit you guys up. If we can make it to the floor on our retirement next week, we'll want to come back and maybe just talk to you a little bit about this constitutional amendment that'll be on the August 6th primary.
Be happy to have you here.
All right. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.